All right, let's talk about one of the biggest, most silent killers in trading, overfitting. We're going to tackle this head on, but we're going to do it using a framework from a place you probably wouldn't expect, the world of high-precision manufacturing. Yeah, you heard that right.
So picture this. You've spent months, maybe even years, building what you think is the perfect trading strategy. You run it on historical data, and it's beautiful. I mean, just a flawless, skyrocketing equity curve. You're thinking, this is it. I've found the Holy Grail. But what if that perfection?
What if it was actually just a detailed map leading you straight off a cliff? That, my friends, is the brutal, gut-punching reality of overfitting. And it's a trap that almost every single one of us falls into at some point.
Okay, so to really get our heads around this, let's use an analogy that makes it all crystal clear: the flight simulator.
Think about it. A backtest is literally you flying your strategy in the calm, predictable skies of past market data. You can practice that landing 1,000 times and get it perfect every single time. But the real world, live trading, that's a whole different game. It's filled with turbulence, sudden storms, and a million things the simulator just never prepared you for. And if your testing wasn't tough enough, the second you take off for real, you crash and burn.
Now, to really solve this problem, we have to do something radical. We need to stop thinking like traders and start thinking like engineers. We have to completely redefine what overfitting actually is. And this right here is the critical mental shift. To a trader, overfitting just means, ouch, I lost money. But to an engineer, oh no, it means the product itself, the strategy, was fundamentally flawed from the get-go. It wasn't just bad luck, it was a bad design.
So this is our new definition. A defect isn't a losing trade. The defect is the entire strategy. It's a system that was perfectly engineered to explain the past, but has absolutely zero ability to predict the future. That's a fundamental design defect.
And here's where it gets really powerful. The moment you define something as a defect, you can start to measure it. And as any engineer will tell you, if you can measure it, you can fix it.
We're going to borrow a metric from the Six Sigma playbook called DPMO, which stands for Defects Per Million Opportunities. In our world, an opportunity is simply any time we test our strategy on data it's never seen before. We call this an out-of-sample test. And a defect, well, that's when the strategy fails that test.
The math here is really simple. You just take the number of times your strategy failed on new data, divide that by the total number of tests you ran, and then multiply the whole thing by 1,000,000. Boom, you now have a hard, cold, quantifiable number for your strategy's failure rate.
So what's the goal? The gold standard in Six Sigma is a DPMO of just 3.4. Let that sink in. That means your design process is so ridiculously robust that it only produces a faulty strategy maybe 3 or 4 times out of 1,000,000 attempts. It's an incredibly high bar for sure, but it forces a level of professionalism and rigor that most traders never even consider.
Okay, so let's say our DPMO is way too high. We've got a problem. The next logical step in the process is to play detective and figure out why. What's the root cause of these defects?
Well, it usually comes down to a few usual suspects. First, we make our strategies way too complex. Dozens of rules, filters, and parameters. We don't test them on nearly enough data, and our validation methods are just too easy to pass. But the real core issue, the big one, it's that we get really good at finding patterns in random noise. We build this intricate masterpiece designed to trade yesterday's chaos, which is completely and utterly useless for tomorrow.
All right, enough about the problem. How do we actually fix this? How do we proactively design strategies that are tough, that are robust, and they can actually survive in the real world?
We start with a tool called a failure mode in effects analysis. Basically, we try to predict how things could fail before they do. So for overfitting, the severity is a 10. It's catastrophic. It'll wipe you out. The problem is, our ability to detect it ahead of time is pretty low. Let's call it an 8. You multiply those together and you get a crazy high risk priority number. That tells us in no uncertain terms, this is priority number 1. This is the thing we have to fix first.
So, one of the most powerful ways to do that is through something called parameter sensitivity testing. Here's the deal. A robust strategy shouldn't be a delicate flower that dies if the wind blows the wrong way. It should be a tank.
And here is a perfect example of a delicate flower. Let's say your strategy makes a fortune with a 12-period moving average. But if you just nudge it to 11 or to 13, it's a complete catastrophe. If that's your situation, you haven't found a real market edge. You've just found a random statistical coincidence in your data.
Your system is brittle, and I guarantee you it is going to break.
And beyond that, we just throw everything we can at it. We use rigorous out-of-sample data, of course. We check if it works on other markets, not just the one we built it for. We even do crazy things like add random noise to the price data or shift it around a bit, just to see if the strategy can survive the abuse. This is how you forge something that can actually last.
So let's bring this all the way back around to where we started and connect our engineering fix to that flight simulator problem.
You know, the great physicist Enrico Fermi pointed this out a long time ago. He basically said if you give yourself enough knobs to turn and levers to pull, you can perfectly explain anything that has already happened. That's the easy part. The real challenge, the real genius, is building something that has a chance of telling you what's going to happen next.
And in the end, that's the one question this whole process forces you to answer. After all the simulations, after all the stress tests, after treating this not like a hobby but like a critical piece of engineering, can you look at your strategy and say with confidence that it's truly ready for flight? Or is it just sitting on the runway waiting for the first bit of real-world turbulence to fall right out of the sky?